Chapter 21, Increasing Endurance. For the first match of the second round, Alaric Silvesad and Lucas announced the first matchup, and the crowd immediately cheered in excitement. In a strength-centric nation like the Estonian Empire, everyone loved to watch the knights fight. It was like a tradition to them. The imperial family even established a battle coliseum where the most powerful knights in the kingdom fought in a formal match to decide who was the strongest. That was how the Estonian Dragon Leaderboard was created, a list that ranks the most powerful in the empire. Other than the glory of having their names etched on the leaderboard, the rankers also annually receive generous rewards from the imperial family to keep them motivated. The higher their rank, the more generous their rewards will be. For these reasons, many aspiring warriors from all over the empire wish to one day see their names on the leaderboard. That was how special the Estonian Dragon Leaderboard was. At this moment, if you want to rest, I can give you a few minutes. I don't want to fight an exhausted opponent. Alaric stared at his opponent in surprise. He didn't expect to hear these words from him. This guy is a true knight. Alaric stared at him deeply. Knights like him are always the first ones to die on the battlefield. Alaric respected their discipline and their strict mentality. He was just like them in his past life, but he started changing when he experienced the cruelty of war. I'm fine. We can start our fight now. Alaric unsheathed his swords to reveal his intentions. Seeing this, his opponent no longer hesitated and took out his weapon, a sword with average length. In their first clash, Alaric could tell that this guy was much better than his first opponent. He was more versatile and quicker to react. This guy should be on the same level as Aldrin. Alaric thought to himself. He didn't let the battle drag on and ended it in less than 10 moves. Alaric's victory no longer came as a surprise considering how he had won his first match. More and more people cheered for him. Even those who were skeptical about his skills no longer doubted him. Two successive victories against experienced knights wasn't a mere coincidence. At this point, anyone could tell that Alaric was no ordinary knight even though he had only recently advanced. For the next match, it was Anthony's turn. His opponent was also a great fighter, but his skills still fell short against a much better Anthony. The battle ended with Anthony's victory. In the third match, the person who won was not a knight from any household, but a veteran mercenary who had some fame in Vale. For the last match, it was finally Dylan's turn. He was one of the crowd favorite. The moment he stepped on the stage, the guests were fired up. For this battle, he didn't win as easily as he did in the first round. It wasn't because he was weak. His opponent was just strong. This also made everyone realize that the remaining participants were no longer your average knights. The second round concluded with Dylan's difficult victory. Another person was called to draw the lots for the final four. When the matchups were announced, everyone was bubbling with excitement. Oh no! Lord Alaric is matched with Sir Anthony. Who do you think will win between them? I'm not sure. They both won their fights convincingly, so it's hard to tell. I think Sir Anthony has the upper hand. His weapon has a longer range and he is also a bit more powerful. The guests argued over who would win between Alaric and Anthony. Both men were amazing and they won spectacularly in their battles, so everyone was divided. No one knew how the battle would end. As the two men stepped on the stage, the atmosphere became even more intense. I am surprised by your skills, my lord. I hope that I can give you a good battle. Anthony bowed respectfully. Alaric reciprocated the gesture with a light bow. After Lucas announced the start of the match, the two pulled out their weapons and charged towards each other at the same time. True to his fame, Anthony's halberd was strong and unshakable. Even with Alaric's improved strength, he found out that he was still weaker in terms of raw power. His strength alone is already above that of rigor and his skill should be on the same level as Henry. Alaric couldn't break through Anthony's defense. No matter how fast his sword was, Anthony could block his attack with perfect timing. Meanwhile, he didn't even dare block Anthony's halberd head-on. He hadn't increased his endurance, so if he forcefully blocked Anthony's halberd at his current level, he would only be injured. Should I increase my endurance with my remaining stat points? Anthony was an opponent who couldn't be defeated with his swordsmanship alone. It wasn't that his swordsmanship was weak, but it was because his strength was still lacking to display the true power of his swordsmanship. After some thought, Alaric no longer hesitated. He used his remaining stat points to increase his endurance. Alaric Silvasud 90 XP, 31 500ths. Potential B. Traits: horseback riding C, swordsmanship SSS, close combat D, archery F, hunting E, tracking F. Strength 38, stamina 28, agility 35, vitality 27, endurance 42, mana 13, battle points 460, stat points 0. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. With that, he had used up all the stat points he had saved up, but Alaric couldn't care less. After increasing his endurance, he had a feeling that his muscles and bones had become more durable. In the next moment, Alaric no longer evaded Anthony's halberd. He faced the veteran knight head-on and began a fierce clash with him. What is going on? How is he able to block my halberd now? Anthony was stunned by the sudden improvement in Alaric's defense. Earlier, he was still overwhelming Alaric with his halberd, but in the next instant, Alaric could already block his attacks. Meanwhile, Alaric could also sense the huge change. His arms no longer felt like they were tearing apart every time their weapons clashed. He could now withstand the powerful blow of Anthony's halberd. I can win this. Chapter 22, Arthur Valken. Normally, a fight between knights would conclude in just a few moves, but there were cases when the battle dragged on because of the amazing skills of the two fighters. At this moment, Alaric and Anthony had already clashed more than 20 times, and there was still no clear indication of who would come out as the victor. The crowd watched with bated breath as the two knights fought. It was a battle unlike any other. Is Lord Alaric really a new knight? One of the guests murmured with a face full of disbelief. A few people heard him, but no one was in the mood to reply. They were all so shocked by the ongoing battle that they were unable to respond. Anthony Oliver was a knight of Vale. He had decades of experience, and this cemented his reputation as one of the most powerful knights in the surrounding cities. However, he found himself struggling to win against a newly advanced knight, and this made him feel utterly confounded. Just what kind of son did Baron Lucas raise? The more he fought with Alaric, the more stunned he became. Alaric didn't fight like the newbie everyone thought he was. He was like a seasoned veteran who had fought countless battles, but the most impressive thing about him was his swordsmanship. Alaric's every move was calculated, and there were no extra movements. He wasn't even trying to be flashy, but he moved with such elegance that it almost looked like he was doing a performance. What a dazzling swordsmanship! Anthony had never seen something like this before. It was beautiful and dreadful at the same time. As the battle continued, Anthony's stamina was starting to decline. His halberd was getting heavier and heavier. I'm getting old. Anthony lowered his halberd and muttered while lightly shaking his head. I concede. No one expected him to surrender in the middle of the fight, but the crowd accepted the result. Alaric's abilities had surpassed their expectations. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that he was unrivaled among knights. Thank you, my lord. It was a good fight. Unfortunately, I'm already too old to give you a satisfactory battle. Anthony gave a snappy knight salute. Alaric sheathed his swords and returned the salute. What are you saying, Sir Anthony? If we were to use mana, I would have no chance to defeat you. I have learned a lot from this battle. Thank you. Anthony merely smiled at his words. He knew that Alaric was just saying those words to make him feel better. Although he had more mana than Alaric at this moment, it was only a matter of time before he would surpass him given Alaric's potential. For this battle, it is Alaric's victory. Lucas announced the results. The venue shook with excitement after his announcement. Holy shit! He actually won! Ha ha ha. I didn't bet on the wrong person. I knew Lord Alaric could do it. My precious gold coins are gone now. While everyone was talking about Alaric's victory, one person was seething with anger. How could this be? He even defeated Anthony Oliver. Is Lucas's blood really that strong? Charles could hardly contain his emotions. Lord Charles, you must be feeling proud to have such a powerful nephew. Congratulations! A voice suddenly drifted into his ears. Charles almost vomited blood when he heard those words. He turned his head and saw that it was an official from Vale, an old man named Chandler. Under the city lord were 10 officials who helped him in managing Vale. Chandler was the oldest official among the 10, and he had already served 3 city lords. As arrogant as he was, Charles didn't dare provoke this old man, so he could only swallow his anger. Am I so obvious, Sir Chandler? He forced out a smile. The old official chuckled as he stroked his beard. No wonder you suggested for him to join the competition. I thought you just wanted him to gain some experience. I never expected that Lord Alaric was such a skillful swordsman. Ha ha ha. But of course. Whose nephew do you think he is? Charles laughed. He used the chance to strike up a conversation with the old man. At this moment, the next participants were already called to the stage. Dylan Heinrich stepped forward. He was confident when he suggested this competition, but his confidence started to fade away when he saw how powerful the other participants were, especially Alaric, who had only turned 18. I was too arrogant. I thought that my talent was one of the best in the Empire. Compared to Alaric, I'm nothing. Dylan thought to himself. However, I won't give up just like that. Talent isn't the only factor that determines the growth of an individual. Talent without effort is meaningless. I will use this opportunity to sharpen my blade and prepare myself for the future battles that I will face. With renewed confidence, Dylan's eyes flashed with unshakable resolve. His opponent finally stepped onto the stage. Arthur Valken, a veteran mercenary who was only a step away from becoming an elite knight. He was a decade younger than Anthony, but the battles he had faced were as numerous as the old knight. He was born a commoner, and he was sold off by his parents to a mercenary group when he was young. At the early age of 6, he was forced to learn swordsmanship. He had no choice since he was already their possession. Through the years, he stayed with the mercenary group that bought him. He hated his parents, and he also hated the mercenary group that separated him from his family. However, as the years went by, he gradually became accustomed to his life as a mercenary. He had even forgotten his parents, who had heartlessly sold him off. At this moment, he had already freed himself from the mercenary group and established his name in the industry. My name is Arthur Valken. Arthur greeted his opponent with a simple bow. Chapter 23, Final Match. Arthur wore a simple leather armor and a pair of leather wrist guards. His face was covered in slash wounds, and he also had a gnarly scar on the left side of his face that exposed his teeth. With one look on his face, anyone could tell how he had lived his life. Because of his scar, Arthur spoke with a weird voice, but no one dared to make fun of him. They had seen how he had defeated his opponents in the earlier match. He overwhelmed them with sheer power alone. Arthur's main weapon was a giant mace, but it was too dangerous to use in this competition, so he used a two-handed broadsword instead. Even though he didn't use his main weapon, he still managed to defeat his opponents without difficulty. As soon as their battle began, Dylan took the initiative to attack. He brandished his long sword, causing a sharp whooshing sound in the air. My sword has a longer reach. I need to use this to my advantage and not let him land a heavy blow on me. Dylan was aware of his opponent's power. He wanted to end the fight as quickly as possible. However, Arthur wasn't your average warrior. He had faced numerous enemies on the battlefield, and he had already mastered the ability to react in any situation. He expertly blocked Dylan's long sword with precise maneuvers. Clang, clang, clang. The latter's longsword couldn't even touch Arthur's armor. Arthur was like a mountain, steady and firm. No matter how hard Dylan pushed his sword, he couldn't force Arthur to take a step back. In the end, Arthur capitalized on Dylan's decreasing momentum to make a counterattack. After less than 10 moves, Dylan was forced to concede. Who would have thought that a mercenary would actually progress this far? I can't believe he defeated Lord Dylan in such a manner. It didn't even look like he struggled in that fight. Lord Dylan is still young. He has plenty of time to train. So the final battle is between Lord Alaric and Sir Arthur. Who do you guys think will win? Arthur was given some time to rest before the final match against Alaric. In the meantime, the guests started betting on their favorite participants, making the banquet hall boisterous and entertaining. At this moment, Alaric was drinking a glass of water he got from Elena. Good luck, my lord. Please do your best on your next battle. The little girl cheered for him. Alaric smiled upon hearing her words. I will. A few moments later, the two remaining participants were finally called up. Alaric stared at Arthur. Arthur Valken, this man died during the orc invasion in my past life. He was hired by Vale to support the city's soldiers in fighting the orcs. He fought bravely against those monsters without retreating. Unfortunately, he encountered an elite orc warrior and was killed in that battle. The orc invasion was an event that would happen a few years from now. When this happened in his past life, Lucas was already dead and it was Alaric who lent support to Vale in stopping the orcs. At that time, Alaric had only become a knight, so his contribution in that battle was minimal. In the end, Vale managed to repel the orc army with the support of the neighboring cities and towns. It was one of the major battles that he had participated in before the Civil War. I have heard a lot about you, Sir Arthur. You managed to become that strong despite the difficulties you had faced in your life. I admire you. Alaric spoke with a sincere tone. Arthur was taken aback by his words. Most people feared him because of his looks, while there are even others who looked down on him because of his lowly origins. It was the first time he heard someone express admiration for him. Don't expect me to go easy on you because of those words, he muttered while staring deeply at the young knight. When he first heard about Alaric's advancement, he was filled with envy and curiosity. He was envious of Alaric's family who had always supported their son's growth. He was also curious about Alaric, who was believed to have a talent that was on par with the emperor's. Now that he had seen him, he realized that Alaric was more approachable than he had imagined. He was respectful and friendly, unlike most noble heirs he had known. Alaric chuckled at his words. I will be honored to fight you at your best, he muttered. After exchanging some words, the two went into battle position. Soon, the two moved at the same time and clashed. Clang, clang. The loud collision of their weapons echoed within the banquet hall. When they clashed, Arthur finally realized why a knight with decades of experience like Anthony was defeated at the hands of Alaric. No wonder he won against Anthony. What a fearsome swordsmanship! Now that he had experienced it for himself, he found out the horror of Alaric's swordsmanship. It was beautiful, precise, and strong. He thought that he would be able to overwhelm Alaric with his brute force, but the guy always managed to deflect or block his broadsword without showing any signs of difficulty. How is he so strong at this age? Meanwhile, Alaric was enjoying their battle. There is no technique behind his sword, just pure brute force. His fighting style is just like his personality, simple and fierce. I want this guy. Alaric had a strong desire to have Arthur in the household. It wasn't just because of his skills, but also because of his honest personality. He might be old, but age won't stop someone's potential, especially someone like Arthur who has a firm and determined heart. If I defeat you here, please work for me. Alaric didn't hesitate to voice out his intentions. Arthur raised his eyebrows upon hearing his words. Then you better give it your all, my lord. Chapter 24, Former Commander. I need to end this soon before I run out of stamina. Arthur was starting to accumulate fatigue after the repeated clashes with Alaric. The latter was fast and crafty. He had to stay alert at all times to block Alaric's attacks. One mistake and the fight would be over. Without the help of mana, I can't hold on to this weapon for very long. He was using a two-handed broadsword which was almost 10 kilograms in weight. Normally, he would use mana to lessen the pressure on his arms, but he couldn't use mana in this competition. He wouldn't be able to wield a heavy weapon like this for a long time with just pure strength alone. Beads of sweat trickled down his face as he looked at Alaric, who was still full of energy. How is he not tired after moving around like that? How I wish to be young again. As the battle continued, Arthur's movements became sluggish and he could hardly block Alaric's swords. I can still fight. Arthur's eyes flashed with determination. Despite the extreme fatigue he was feeling, he brandished his two-handed broadsword with all his might in an attempt to defeat Alaric in one final move. Seeing this, Alaric wasn't flustered. He could see the trajectory of Arthur's sword because it was moving so slowly in his eyes. I can evade this if I want to, but I don't want to win in that manner. I have to thoroughly defeat him. As he thought of this, Alaric lunged forward and spun twice in midair to gain momentum. He then cleaved down both swords to meet Arthur's broadsword. Clang! A violent clanging sound echoed as their weapons clashed. Crack! Suddenly, a crack appeared on Arthur's broadsword. In the next moment, the blade of his sword broke apart. Alaric immediately stopped his sword before it touched Arthur's body. Underscore. Mission complete. You received 150 battle points, 30 XP, and F-Rank talent card by 1. Underscore. The cheering of the crowd fell on deaf ears as the cyan screen appeared in front of him. Do you want to use the F-Rank talent card? Yes, no. Upon seeing this, Alaric clicked yes out of habit. You awaken the F-Rank 6th Sense talent. Alaric Silvasod 90 XP, 61 500ths. Potential B. Traits: Horseback Riding C, Swordsmanship SSS, Close Combat D, Archery F, Hunting E, Tracking F, 6th Sense F. Strength 38. Stamina 28. Agility 35. Vitality 27. Endurance 42. Mana 13. Battle points 610. Stat points 0. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He gained another talent, but he was unsure what it was for. I'll deal with this later, he thought as he closed the cyan screen with a thought. He then searched for Arthur from the crowd and saw him walking away with a regretful expression. Alaric immediately chased after him. Sir Arthur, he called out to the mercenary. Arthur stopped in his tracks and turned his head. What can I do for you, my lord? I'm serious about my invitation earlier. Please stay after the banquet. I'd like to speak with you, Alaric stated without hesitation. Arthur shook his head. I'm just an old knight, my lord. I have already exhausted my potential. I might be powerful among knights, but that's already my limit. I'm afraid that I will have to disappoint you. He sounded downcast when he uttered those words. Hearing this, Alaric smiled faintly. Sir Arthur, it's too early for you to give up on reaching a higher level. I believe in your potential. Please give me a chance to speak with you after the celebration. He didn't want to give up on this man. Arthur was being held back by his inferiority complex and his lack of resources. Once this would be addressed, advancing to the next level wasn't impossible. Arthur felt the sincerity in his words. He also felt something light up from deep within him when he stared at Alaric's eyes. After a moment of silence, Arthur finally nodded. All right, I will spare some time to chat with you, my lord. Great! I can't wait. Alaric beamed after getting him to accept his invitation. Now, he just needed to convince him. The celebration continued after the unofficial competition between the knights, and everyone congratulated Alaric for his victory. Most of the guests expressed their desire to marry off their daughters to Alaric, but Lucas gave them a vague answer. He didn't want to force his son into an arranged marriage. He felt that it would hinder Alaric's potential and affect his mental health. Lucas didn't want to see that happen. At this moment, Alaric was chatting with someone when he noticed Anthony Oliver walking in William's direction. "Excuse me." Alaric immediately excused himself and went to see the situation. As soon as he got closer, he saw Anthony giving William a respectful salute. "Greetings, Commander William." Alaric's eyes widened when he heard his words. "Is Sir William the former commander of Vale's armed forces?" William waved his hand and shook his head. "What are you talking about? I have already retired. I'm no longer your commander." "That's true, but I would feel wrong if I didn't greet you like this, sir." Anthony sighed to himself upon seeing William's aged face. There wasn't a semblance of the glorious commander that he once was. "It's all in the past. I'm just an ordinary old man now," William muttered with a forced smile. As he approached them, Alaric could feel the pain and the regret in the old man's eyes. "I haven't given up on searching for dragon-tail ferns, sir. Just wait a bit more. I only need a few more stalks to have enough for your advancement." Anthony spoke with a resolute gaze. "Ahem." Alaric faked a cough and said, "I'm sorry. I overheard your conversation." "Lord Alaric." "My lord." Anthony and the old man stared at him in surprise. "Talk about the timing of his arrival. I might be able to help you with this matter." Alaric smiled as he uttered those words. "I need to end this soon before I run out of stamina." Arthur was starting to accumulate fatigue after the repeated clashes with Alaric. The latter was fast and crafty. He had to stay alert at all times to block Alaric's attacks. One mistake and the fight would be over. "Without the help of mana, I can't hold on to this weapon for very long." He was using a two-handed broadsword which was almost 10 kilograms in weight. Normally, he would use mana to lessen the pressure on his arms, but he couldn't use mana in this competition. He wouldn't be able to wield a heavy weapon like this for a long time with just pure strength alone. Beads of sweat trickled down his face as he looked at Alaric, who was still full of energy. How is he not tired after moving around like that? How I wish to be young again. As the battle continued, Arthur's movements became sluggish and he could hardly block Alaric's swords. "I can still fight." Arthur's eyes flashed with determination. Despite the extreme fatigue he was feeling, he brandished his two-handed broadsword with all his might in an attempt to defeat Alaric in one final move. Seeing this, Alaric wasn't flustered. He could see the trajectory of Arthur's sword because it was moving so slowly in his eyes. "I can evade this if I want to, but I don't want to win in that manner. I have to thoroughly defeat him." As he thought of this, Alaric lunged forward and spun twice in midair to gain momentum. He then cleaved down both swords to meet Arthur's broadsword. Clang! A violent clanging sound echoed as their weapons clashed. Crack! Suddenly, a crack appeared on Arthur's broadsword. In the next moment, the blade of his sword broke apart. Alaric immediately stopped his sword before it touched Arthur's body. Underscore, mission complete. You received 150 battle points, 30 XP, and F-Rank talent card by 1. Underscore. The cheering of the crowd fell on deaf ears as the cyan screen appeared in front of him. Do you want to use the F-Rank talent card? Yes, no. Upon seeing this, Alaric clicked yes out of habit. You awaken the F-Rank 6th Sense talent. Alaric Silvasod 90 XP, 61/500ths. Potential B. Traits: Horseback Riding C, Swordsmanship SSS, Close Combat D, Archery F, Hunting E, Tracking F, 6th Sense F. Strength 38. Stamina 28. Agility 35. Vitality 27. Endurance 42. Mana 13. Battle points 610. Stat points 0. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He gained another talent, but he was unsure what it was for. I'll deal with this later, he thought as he closed a cyan screen with a thought. He then searched for Arthur from the crowd and saw him walking away with a regretful expression. Alaric immediately chased after him. Sir Arthur, he called out to the mercenary. Arthur stopped in his tracks and turned his head. "What can I do for you, my lord?" "I'm serious about my invitation earlier. Please stay after the banquet." "I'd like to speak with you," Alaric stated without hesitation. Arthur shook his head. "I'm just an old knight, my lord. I have already exhausted my potential. I might be powerful among knights, but that's already my limit. I'm afraid that I will have to disappoint you." He sounded downcast when he uttered those words. Hearing this, Alaric smiled faintly. "Sir Arthur, it's too early for you to give up on reaching a higher level. I believe in your potential. Please give me a chance to speak with you after the celebration." He didn't want to give up on this man. Arthur was being held back by his inferiority complex and his lack of resources. Once this would be addressed, advancing to the next level wasn't impossible. Arthur felt the sincerity in his words. He also felt something light up from deep within him when he stared at Alaric's eyes. After a moment of silence, Arthur finally nodded. "All right. I will spare some time to chat with you, my lord." "Great! I can't wait." Alaric beamed after getting him to accept his invitation. Now, he just needed to convince him. The celebration continued after the unofficial competition between the knights, and everyone congratulated Alaric for his victory. Most of the guests expressed their desire to marry off their daughters to Alaric, but Lucas gave them a vague answer. He didn't want to force his son into an arranged marriage. He felt that it would hinder Alaric's potential and affect his mental health. Lucas didn't want to see that happen. At this moment, Alaric was chatting with someone when he noticed Anthony Oliver walking in William's direction. "Excuse me." Alaric immediately excused himself and went to see the situation. As soon as he got closer, he saw Anthony giving William a respectful salute. "Greetings, Commander William." Alaric's eyes widened when he heard his words. "Is Sir William the former commander of Vale's armed forces?" William waved his hand and shook his head. "What are you talking about? I have already retired. I'm no longer your commander." "That's true, but I would feel wrong if I didn't greet you like this, sir." Anthony sighed to himself upon seeing William's aged face. There wasn't a semblance of the glorious commander that he once was. "It's all in the past. I'm just an ordinary old man now," William muttered with a forced smile. As he approached them, Alaric could feel the pain and the regret in the old man's eyes. "I haven't given up on searching for dragon tail ferns, sir. Just wait a bit more. I only need a few more stalks to have enough for your advancement." Anthony spoke with a resolute gaze. "Ahem." Alaric faked a cough and said, "I'm sorry. I overheard your conversation." "Lord Alaric." "My lord." Anthony and the old man stared at him in surprise. "Talk about the timing of his arrival. I might be able to help you with this matter." Alaric smiled as he uttered those words. "Are you speaking the truth, my lord?" Anthony was agitated by his words. William's declining health has been a great concern for him. As his former subordinate, he didn't want to see his commander suffer quietly after his long service. Alaric nodded. "But before that, can you explain what's going on?" "This is the first time I've heard of this." He hadn't heard about William in his past life. This means that the old man had most likely perished without finding a solution to his problem. Anthony didn't speak right away. He looked at the old man to seek his opinion. It was only when William nodded his head did Anthony replied, "It's a long story, so I'll make it short." So William failed to advance in the transcendent night realm, and this caused him to be significantly injured. The only way to heal him is for him to successfully advance, but this attempt would require a lot of dragon tail ferns. Hearing this, Alaric rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "How many stalks do you need exactly?" "We need around 15 stalks, but even with that much, it's still not guaranteed," Anthony responded in a heavy tone. 15 stalks. Alaric thought that the old man would need more. It seems like he had underestimated the efficacy of the herb. Anthony nodded. "I already have 7 stalks with me, so I'm only lacking 8 to collect 15. "Just forget about it. Dragon tail ferns are not easy to find, and just 1 stalk is worth around 15 to 20 gold coins or possibly even more. William shook his head and sighed. I see, Sir William just needs dragon-tail ferns, right? Alaric smiled all of a sudden. Seeing his expression, Anthony's eyes flashed with hope. Could it be you have some dragon-tail ferns, my lord? William stared at Alaric in surprise. Even for a noble household, such herbs were rare and hard to find. Alaric nodded. We managed to acquire some stocks, and I have more than what you need. Is that true? Anthony wanted to inquire further, but William stopped him with a raise of his hand. What do you want in return, my lord? I don't think you are giving them for free, William asked with narrowed eyes. He had already negotiated once with Alaric, so he had some degree of understanding about him. Alaric's smile deepened. William was truly a perceptive man. The old man understood his intentions without an explanation. As you both know, dragon-tail ferns are strategic resources. Every household would only use them for their people. House Silvasod is just a small barony, but we also need the herb to help our knights advance and increase their mana. If I offer the herbs to you, we would lose a substantial portion of our stock, and it might even affect our knights' advancement and mana training. If Sir William promises to work for me, I won't just give you 15 stocks. I will offer you 20 to help you in your advancement. Alaric calmly stated his intention. This was an elite knight who had a chance of advancing to the next realm. 20 stocks might be a lot, but so what? A transcendent knight was worth more than 20 stocks of dragon-tail ferns. In the household, only his father was a transcendent knight. If he managed to get William to serve him, the household would gain a powerful warrior. Anthony's eyes widened upon hearing his words. That's not possible. William shook his head. I have already promised my wife that I will never return to that kind of life. I'm sorry to disappoint you, my lord, but I have to decline your offer. William firmly rejected it with a calm look. Anthony looked like he wanted to say something, but no words came out of his mouth. Alaric didn't expect to get rejected. He sighed regretfully while shaking his head. I respect your decision, Sir William. It was insensitive of me to take advantage of your predicament. I will deliver the 15 stocks to you after the banquet. Please forgive me. Excuse me. He then bowed to the two old knights and left without looking back. It was a bit regretful, but he couldn't force the matter. He didn't want to destroy his relationship with the orphanage because of his greed, so he decisively took a step back. Looking at Alaric's back, the two old knights were silent for a moment. Did he just say that he will deliver 15 stocks to you after the banquet? Anthony muttered as if he couldn't believe his ears. That's what he said. William shrugged. He never thought that Alaric would give up just like that. We will know if he is speaking the truth. I'll stay here and wait with you. For Anthony, this was a chance that he didn't want to pass up. At this moment, Rasmus, who was dressed comfortably, approached. Grandpa, I saw you guys talking with Lord Alaric. What did you guys talk about? Rasmus asked with a curious look. William glared at him, making the teen shrink his neck in fear. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The celebration resumed until evening and another activity was held to entertain the guest. A famous troupe was invited for the evening activity. It was a group that had recently become famous in the neighboring cities. As soon as they stepped on the stage, the guests watched their performances with great attention. Dad really prepared a lot for this celebration. Alaric thought to himself as he watched the performance. The joyous atmosphere made him temporarily forget his worries. I wish this kind of peace would last longer. Unfortunately, he was aware that this wish would never come true. 5 months from now, a large group of goblins would come to attack North Pine Town. When this attack happened in his past life, he was yet to become a knight, so he wasn't able to join the battle. However, things were different now. He didn't want to be powerless like he was in his past life. Chapter 26, Max Strength. After the celebration, Alaric sent Galliner to give William the 15 stocks he had promised. Lord Alaric asked me to give this to you. Galliner handed a wooden box to William. An elite knight. When did House Silvasod get another warrior at this level? Anthony stared at Galliner in shock. Although the latter suppressed his power, Anthony still sensed the overwhelming mana he possessed. William took the wooden box. "Thank you. I'll speak with Lord Alaric soon and personally give him my thanks." This was Alaric's goodwill, so he didn't reject it this time. If you want to use the items inside the box, you are free to use the empty rooms in the mansion, Galliner reminded. "There's no hurry," William replied. There were still plenty of guests in the venue. Using the herbs might attract and wanted attention, so he didn't want to absorb them for the time being. "All right, my job here is done." Galliner gave them a fist-palm salute before he turned around and left. "Sir, that guy is an elite knight," Anthony exclaimed as soon as Galliner left. William nodded. "I know. And he is not an ordinary elite knight either. He is probably stronger than the current commander of Vale's armed forces." That powerful? Anthony was surprised by his words. "I don't know how it happened, but he works for Lord Alaric now. The young man, if given enough time, would definitely become a renowned figure like his father, Lord Lucas." William spoke with a serious voice. "Enough about that. Let's see if he really gave the real thing." Anthony turned his attention to the wooden box. William looked around. When he noticed that there was no one nearby, he slowly opened the lid of the box, revealing mature dragon-tail ferns. William immediately closed the box after seeing what was inside. "It's the real deal. He really gave you 15 stocks just like that. Unbelievable." Anthony was stunned. William carefully kept the wooden box and stared in a certain direction. "I will remember this favor, Lord Alaric." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, in a small pavilion beside the venue, Alaric was having a serious conversation with Arthur. "Sir Arthur, you already know my intentions, so I won't beat around the bush. Please work for me." Alaric stared deeply at the old mercenary. Arthur furrowed his eyebrows. "Why did you choose me, my lord?" "I'm already old and I have already used up my potential." "I don't think there is anything special about me." "Yes, you're right. You are already past the best age for mana trading. But who said that you no longer have any potential?" Alaric chuckled. To him, potential was just secondary. The one thing he liked about Arthur was his loyalty and skills. Potential can be supplemented with enough resources, and House Silvisud can give you enough to advance to higher realms. "Sir Arthur, tell me your lifelong wish." "My lifelong wish." Arthur's eyes spaced out as he entered into deep thought. I want my name to be etched on the Estanian dragon leaderboard." The mercenary was embarrassed when he muttered those words. He thought that Alaric would laugh at his ridiculous wish, but the latter only nodded calmly. "What a coincidence. I also wish to one day have my name etched on the leaderboard." "Sir Arthur, if you had enough resources, do you think you can fulfill your wish?" Alaric smiled. Arthur didn't expect him to say such a thing, but considering the potential he had shown, there was a high chance for Alaric to have his place in the leaderboard. "I'm not sure, my lord, but if I had the resources, I would definitely give it my all to realize my dream, no matter how difficult the road may be. Since you have confidence in me, I am willing to serve you. Whether you want me to be your sword or your shield, I, Arthur Valken, will follow your commands." The old mercenary bent his knee as he solemnly uttered the knight's oath. Alaric smiled and placed his hand on the mercenary's shoulder. "You will not regret this choice, Sir Arthur." And that was how Alaric managed to get an experienced knight to serve him. 2 months later, on the 16th of November in the Estanian calendar, Alaric had just completed his daily mission. Alaric Silvisud 90 XP, 129 500ths. Potential B. Traits: horseback riding C, swordsmanship SSS, close combat D, archery F, hunting E, tracking F, sixth sense F. Strength 38 plus, stamina 28 plus, agility 35 plus, vitality 27 plus, endurance 42 plus, mana 13 plus, battle points 1,290, stat points 68. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. After training for 2 months, I realized that I could no longer increase my mana and my physical abilities through normal methods. The only way for me to increase them is by adding stat points. I have only collected 68 stat points after 2 months of doing the daily missions. This progress is too slow. I wish there was another mission for me. Alaric sighed while shaking his head. I'll slowly increase my stats. Let's start by pushing my strength to 100. Alaric used 60 to unallocated stat points to his strength, which immediately elevated it to 100. Now, he was only left with 6 stat points. He tried adding more stat points to his strength, but he found out that he couldn't add more points to it. So at my current level, 100 is the limit. Without hesitation, he added the remaining 6 stat points to his stamina, pushing it to 34. Alaric could sense the changes in his body. Without even checking it, he could tell that his muscles and bones had undergone massive changes. So this is how it feels like to max out my strength. I think I can even smash through a thick wall with a single punch, Alaric thought as he looked at his clenched fist. Suddenly, he noticed a servant running towards him with an urgent look. My lord. Alaric raised his eyebrows. What is it? The servant took a moment to catch his breath before he responded. Our soldiers discovered something in the evergreen forest. Alaric narrowed his eyes. Have you told the Baron about this? Yes, my lord, his lordship is already on his way to the evergreen forest, the servant replied cautiously. Chapter 27, Goblin Scout. Alaric didn't waste any time. He immediately gathered his men and brought them to the evergreen forest. Galliner was currently guarding the soap shop in Vale, so he only took Arthur and some knight apprentices. Looking at the departing figures, Rasmus furrowed his eyebrows. I wonder what happened out there for Lord Alaric to react like that. He lowered his gaze and looked at his sword. He noticed that his hands were already full of cuts and calluses. This was caused by the strict training that he had undertaken together with the other prospective knight apprentices. In the last 2 months, he had learned a lot of things, including basic close combat, horse riding, and swordsmanship. All prospective talents were also taught the basic commands and hand signals. Rasmus was no longer the ordinary teen that he was before, but he was still unsatisfied with his performance. I'm still too weak. I'm not even a knight apprentice yet. I must work harder so I can be of help to Lord Alaric. As he thought of this, Rasmus tightened his grip on the sword and resumed his training. Meanwhile, Alaric's group had already left the estate and arrived at the streets of North Pine Town. Seeing the townspeople blocking the path, Arthur urged his horse to move ahead of Alaric. Make way, he shouted at the pedestrians. When the people saw them rushing urgently along the streets, they immediately vacated the road. Soon, they left the town and arrived at the evergreen forest where a group of knights had already gathered. Alaric raised his hand, signaling his subordinates to slow down. My lord, Alaric saluted the Baron with a serious look. Lucas turned his head and nodded to him. Come here and take a look at this. Alaric could see a green creature the height of a human child lying on the grass, bleeding from a stab wound on its chest. It was no longer moving, but everyone had grim faces as they stared at the creature's corpse. A goblin. Alaric jumped down from his mount and approached the creature's body, observing it closely. This is a goblin scout, Alaric muttered after seeing the creature's outfit and weapon, a crude leather armor and a bone knife. He had some encounters with goblins in his past life, so he was familiar with their behavior and characteristics. Goblins usually send scouts to search for suitable targets. When a target has been found, they would then send their troops to attack. These creatures were small, but they were smarter than common wild animals. They had the intelligence of a human child. There were even goblins who could speak. Other than their unusually high intelligence, they also moved in large groups, which made them even more dangerous. An adult goblin was comparable to a knight apprentice in terms of strength. Stronger goblins were even as powerful as knights. Hearing Alaric's remarks, Lucas was a bit surprised. He didn't recall teaching Alaric about goblin traits. You're right. This is a goblin scout. Since this guy has made its way here, this means that there are more of them out there, Lucas muttered in a flat tone. Alaric frowned at his words. From his memory, there were still 3 months until the goblins would attack North Pinetown, but he couldn't be sure that things would go as they did in his previous life. My lord, we need to form a search party to look for traces of goblin tribes near the town, Alaric suggested while facing the Baron. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Why? Do you think the goblins would come to attack the town? Alaric nodded. When goblin tribes send their scouts, it's usually to look for suitable targets. They are cruel and greedy creatures. They like human flesh the most from what I know, so there is a high chance that they will attack the town. He spoke with great certainty. He had to convince his father here to ensure that they would be prepared for the goblin attack. From what he remembered, the goblin attack would kill more than 10 ordinary soldiers and 3 knight apprentices. It was a small casualty considering the large number of enemy goblins, but it could be prevented with enough preparation. Lucas touched his chin and pondered for a while. All right. Do you think you can handle this task on your own? He wanted to see if his son was willing to take on such a dangerous task. It was a test and also a form of recognition of Alaric's ability. Seeing the expectant expression on his father's face, Alaric nodded with a grim look. I will do my best, my lord. Lucas looked satisfied with his response. In that case, form a search party and look for the goblin tribe. I'll give you the authority to mobilize the knights and the knight apprentices. Report to me immediately if you discover anything. Alaric bowed his head lightly. Yes, my lord. Lucas shifted his gaze and commanded his subordinates, get rid of this corpse. Yes, my lord. Underscore. Mission. Destroy the goblin tribe, eh? Difficulty. Easy. Search for traces of the goblin tribe near North Pinetown. Rewards 200 battle points, 50 XP, and 5 stat points. Penalty for failure, minus 400 battle points. Underscore. Alaric's eyes flashed with joy the moment the science screen appeared before him. He had been waiting for a mission all this time, and it finally came to him. He had almost become sick of doing the daily missions. Alaric closed the screen and turned his head to Arthur, who was standing behind him. Let's return to the estate. Yes, my lord. Alaric jumped on his mount and squeezed his legs, urging it to move. Arthur and the rest of his subordinates quickly followed. As soon as they returned to the estate, Alaric immediately formed for groups, with each group consisting of 1 knight and 4 knight apprentices. Alaric and Arthur led a group each, while the remaining 2 were led by Aldrin and Henry. Now that everyone is here, I'll tell you what you should do. Alaric proceeded with the plan after forming the groups. Chapter 28. Discovery. 3 days have passed since Alaric's group had started searching for traces of goblins. The 4 teams had already searched half of the evergreen forest, but they still hadn't found anything. They should be around here somewhere. Did I miss something? Alaric sorted his memories. He didn't have concrete information about the goblin tribe's location. He only knew that it was his father's elite force led by Commander Warwick who had found their exact location. Do I really need to invite Sir Warwick to join the search? Warwick Mason was an elite knight and the commander of House Silversword's armed forces. He was also Lucas's right-hand man and his most trusted confidant. Without Lucas's approval, even Alaric wouldn't be able to command Warwick to move. That was how special his position was in the household. Meanwhile, in a different part of the forest, Henry discovered some unusual tracks on the ground. Henry crouched and inspected the tracks closely. These aren't traces of wild animals. His eyes narrowed into slits. It must be them. Henry stood up and made a whistling sound to call his scattered subordinates. A moment later, 4 knight apprentices dressed in leather armor appeared and gathered before him. Looking at them, Henry pointed at the tracks he found and said, I think we found our target. The 4 knight apprentices raised their eyebrows in surprise. They lowered their gazes and observed the traces on the ground. They weren't professional hunters, but even they could tell that these weren't animal tracks. What should we do, sir? One of the knight apprentices asked. in a low voice. Henry's expression turned serious as he responded, "From this moment, we need to move as a group. Follow me closely and make sure not to make a sound. We have to ascertain the location of the Goblin tribe before we report back to Lord Alaric." "Yes, sir." "Let's go." Henry led his team to follow the traces. They moved carefully and silently, ensuring that no creatures would be alerted. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a more secluded part of the evergreen forest. The trees here were taller and their leaves were denser, making it hard for sunlight to pass through. The lack of sunlight made it difficult for smaller plants to thrive. Only the stubborn weeds and parasitic mushrooms managed to survive. The strange vegetation made the group feel uneasy. At this moment, Henry waved his hand, signaling his group to get down. The old knight hid behind a big tree and carefully took a peek. A few hundred meters from them, he noticed some crudely made tree houses as well as a flickering light which probably came from a bonfire. Henry made another hand gesture to his team, informing them about what he saw. The knight apprentices cautiously stuck their head out to confirm this. "I'm positive. This is the Goblin tribe that we are looking for," Henry whispered with certainty. "Should we do more investigations, sir?" Hearing this, Henry shook his head. "No. If we go further, they might discover us. We don't want to alert those guys. Doing more observations would only endanger the team, especially considering that there were only 5 of them for being knight apprentices. Once they were discovered, they would have to fight the entire Goblin tribe, which was no different than death sentence." The 4 knight apprentices became silent. "Let's go back and report what we saw here to Lord Alaric," Henry decisively instructed the team. "Yes, sir." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Alaric returned to the estate with a gloomy look on his face. His team scoured their designated areas, but they found no evidence of goblin activity. It's already the 3rd day, but we still haven't found any clue. While he was grumbling at their terrible luck, he suddenly noticed another team entering the estate. "My lord, we found the goblins' camp," Henry reported after greeting him with a salute. Hearing this, Alaric was pleasantly surprised. "Really? Where is it?" Henry took out a map of the evergreen forest and pointed at a certain location. "We found their camp here. We didn't make detailed observations since there is a high chance that they would be alerted." Alaric stared closely at the map and furrowed his eyebrows. It was in the northeastern part of the forest where the evergreens were overgrown and the number of parasitic plants was aplenty. No wonder we weren't able to find them. It turns out that they are hidden in that place. "Great job, Sir Henry. I will make sure that this is reported to the Baron. You will receive your rewards, but we must deal with the important matters first." Henry smiled as he nodded. "Yes, my lord." Getting Alaric's guarantee was enough. He knew that this young heir was in possession of a large number of dragon-tail ferns. If he was given some, he might advance to the elite knight earlier than he had anticipated. "You guys should rest first. We will depart tomorrow before sunrise." Alaric dismissed them. He then quickly headed to his father's study room to report this discovery. It was 30 minutes before 7 and Lucas was still busy dealing with the administrative affairs. Bastian was there to help him, but the number of documents on the table didn't seem to have lessened even after a day of work. "I'm tired. Let's call it a day," Lucas muttered as he put down the document he was reading. Bastian didn't say anything and just quietly bowed to him. Suddenly, knock, knock, knock. Hearing the urgent knocking on the door, Lucas raised his eyebrows and said, "Come in." Alaric pushed the door open and nodded to his father and Bastian. My lord, Henry's team discovered the goblin settlement." Alaric didn't make the Baron wait when he saw the latter's tired look. Hearing this, the Baron frowned. The goblin issue was one of the things that was always in his mind. "So what are your plans?" Lucas muttered while staring intently at his son. "Goblins have sharp eyesight and they can see clearly in the dark, so I decided to push the investigation tomorrow. Once we have gathered enough information about the goblin settlement, I will make a detailed plan on how to attack them." He has already thought it through. Lucas was satisfied with Alaric's decision. He wasn't hasty for success and was even patient enough to wait for the opportune moment. Just tell me if you need anything. Lucas didn't mind giving him some help. After all, dealing with a goblin tribe wouldn't be easy. Alaric didn't reject his offer. I'll let you know when I need your help. Chapter 29, Accident During the Investigation. The next day, Elena woke up early because she knew that Alaric would leave the town again to investigate something. She didn't know the details of the mission, but she knew that it was dangerous since he always brought the knights and the knight apprentices with him every time he went out. While she was heading to Alaric's room, she jolted when she saw him walking by the hallway dressed in his leather armor and with 2 swords tied to his waist. "My lord," she called out, feeling surprised. Alaric was also taken aback. Nana. He didn't expect to see her on his way out of the mansion. "Are you leaving again?" Elena approached him, her eyes filled with worrying and concern. Alaric smiled faintly and gently brushed her hair with his hand. "I have to." Elena grabbed his hand and muttered, "Please be careful, my lord." Feeling the warmth of her hands, Alaric squeezed them gently as he replied, "I will." "Remember to stay close to my mother while I'm gone," he reminded her. Elena nodded obediently. "Yes, my lord." "Good." Alaric smiled and embraced her. "I will be back soon." After spending some time with Elena, Alaric headed outside the mansion to meet with the others. As soon as he stepped out of the mansion, he saw the knights and the knight apprentices waiting for him with serious expressions on their faces. Everyone was already informed that the goblin settlement had been found and that their mission was to make further investigations on the layout of the settlement as well as the specific numbers of the goblins. "Everyone, I believe your team leaders had already informed you about the situation, but in case you still haven't been informed, I will go over it one more time." Alaric told them the details of the mission and the tasks of every team. For this operation, each team has a different task. This was to maximize the investigation in a short amount of time. Lastly, please be careful out there. Our goal is only to investigate, so we must avoid combat. If by chance you are discovered, send the signal and retreat immediately, Alaric sternly reminded them. "Yes, my lord," everyone responded in unison. "All right, let's move out." The 4 teams left the estate as a group. The sun hadn't risen yet, so there were only a few people on the streets of the town. By the time they arrived near the goblin settlement, weak rays of light started filtering through the dense forest. It was the crack of dawn and also the time when goblins changed their shifts. This was the reason why Alaric specifically chose this time to investigate the settlement. He wanted to make use of this tiny gap in the defense to have his subordinates observe the goblin camp in more detail. At this moment, the 4 teams had already moved separately to do their investigations. "Just as I guessed, those bastards are still sloppy when it comes to guard duties," Alaric remarked internally when he saw the goblin's relaxed behavior. Suddenly, he caught sight of a larger goblin dressed in leather armor with a metal breastplate. "A hobgoblin? No wonder some knight apprentices were killed in my past life. It must be because of that guy." Hobgoblins are significantly more powerful than goblins. They were as tall as the adult humans and their strength was nearing the fatal grade. They also possessed higher intelligence and they could even speak the human tongue. Hold on, I'm missing something. Even if there's a hobgoblin, it should be impossible for it to kill 3 knight apprentices alone. His expression hardened when he realized something important. In his past life, Warwick Mason and even his father, Lucas Silvasad, joined the battle against the goblin tribe. With their presence, it was impossible for a single hobgoblin to run amok. This means there was more than just one hobgoblin in this settlement. Thinking about this, Alaric's face turned grim. Suddenly, the sound of a firework exploding echoed in the sky, making Alaric and his team look up in unison. A distress signal. There's an accident. It's a signal from Sir Aldrin's team. One of the knight apprentices in Alaric's team exclaimed, "What should we do, my lord? Should we head to their location and provide support?" Another muttered with a hint of unease. Everyone stared at Alaric and waited for his decision. The other teams should be heading to Aldrin's group after they heard the signal. They should be fine as long as they don't encounter the hobgoblins. Alaric thought deeply as he observed the goblin settlement. At this moment, the hobgoblin he saw earlier was already gone. It had probably left to check the situation after it heard the noise. Only a few goblin soldiers stayed to protect the camp. After a moment of silence, Alaric stood up and pulled out his swords. With a sharp gaze, he muttered, "We are heading to their camp. Take out your weapons and follow me." Upon hearing his commands, the 4 knight apprentices were startled. They were unable to comprehend the reason behind his decision. However, they had been trained to follow instructions, so they took out their weapons after a split second of hesitation. While they are distracted, we must kill as many goblins as we can. Move out! Alaric issued a command before he charged straight to the goblin sentries. This wasn't part of the plan. He made this decision promptly after considering the situation. With most of the elite goblins out, Alaric wanted to make use of the chance to eliminate the ones left in the settlement. There were some risks, but he believed that they could pull it off. The goblin sentries noticed them late, so they weren't able to react preemptively. Alaric mercilessly cut off the head of a goblin soldier in one single slash. After the first kill, his eyes displayed extreme disgust and rage for the green creatures. "Die, you bastards! Die! Die!" For the first time since his regression, Alaric revealed his racism towards goblins. Chapter 30. Merciless Slaughter. The knight apprentices behind Alaric were dumbfounded when they saw him killing the goblin sentry with zeal. The stoic image that he had imprinted upon them took a massive hit, and they almost thought that this wasn't Alaric but an entirely different person. The sudden change in his expression and behavior was so abrupt that they had no time to comprehend what was happening. While the knight apprentices were still reeling in shock, Alaric had already lunged at the second goblin. He made a diagonal slash with his sword, which effortlessly cut the poor goblin in half. Whoosh! Thud! Eek! The remaining goblin sentries stared at the crazed human with fear. It was a natural instinct that one would feel after seeing an incredibly powerful predator. Eek! Eek! Hi! Hi! The goblin sentries communicated in weird, high-pitched squealing voices which were uncannily similar to the sound that hyenas make. As if they had made a tacit agreement, the goblins pounced at Alaric simultaneously while waving their bone spears at him, leaving him no room to maneuver. Seeing this, Alaric felt his senses activating at full capacity. His body moved seamlessly, narrowly avoiding the sharp pointed edges of the bone spears. At the same time, he brandished his swords, wielding them forcefully to destroy the crude bone spears. Whoosh! Whoosh! In quick successive slashes, the goblins' bone spears broke apart, leaving them unarmed. After disarming them, Alaric smiled mercilessly. "Die, you filthy green bastards!" A series of whistling sounds echoed as the goblins' bodies were slashed into multiple pieces. Looking at the mutilated bodies of the goblins, the knight apprentices were left horrified. They didn't expect to see this cruel side of Alaric. So scary! I almost pissed my pants watching Lord Alaric kill those goblins in such a manner. Having killed all the sentries, Alaric turned his head at the stunned knight apprentices. "Follow me. Our job is not done yet." His voice carried a trace of viciousness. "Why, yes, my lord." Alaric immediately headed deeper into the goblin settlement with his 4 subordinates tensely following him. They encountered some goblin warriors along the way, but none of them survived under Alaric's fearsome swordplay. The knight apprentices didn't even have to do much. They only need to kill the goblins that Alaric intentionally left alive. Although they were nervous, they still managed to execute their roles effectively. "All those training and drills we did in the past 2 months were definitely worth it," Alaric remarked when he saw the knight apprentices' performance. These guys were among the most talented warriors in the household. They were also more attuned with mana, so they have a high chance of becoming full-fledged knights. "Destroy their houses and make more disturbance," Alaric instructed. "Yes, my lord." Alaric watched the broken tree houses and the goblin corpses around him as he thought. By this time, the elite goblin warriors should have already noticed the situation here. We will have to face those monsters soon. Alaric was eager to try his skills against a hobgoblin. Those creatures were a lot more powerful than normal goblin warriors, and in rare cases, they could grow even stronger than the average human knights. He wanted to make use of them to test his current abilities. He wasn't able to exhibit his full strength in the impromptu competition during the celebration, so this was the perfect chance to assess his power. Suddenly, Alaric saw one of the knight apprentices hesitating to kill a female goblin. And the reason was because it was holding a newborn goblin in its arms. Alaric watched the scene with a cold gaze. In a battle between two races, sympathy was poison. He had experienced it in his past life, so he was aware how cruel the goblins could be. Whether they were young goblins or old, they wouldn't hesitate to kill a human. They were heartless monsters who viewed humans as prey. On the other hand, some human soldiers would hesitate to kill when they encounter non-combatant goblins. Alaric had seen so many people die because of their compassion. In fact, he was also the same as them. He only changed after seeing how his comrades died because of their kindness. It was also how he had developed a strong hate against goblins. At this moment, the female goblin that was holding its baby suddenly pulled out a bone knife from out of nowhere and pounced at the hesitant knight apprentice. Startled, the knight apprentice quickly parried the bone knife using his sword and plunged it into the female goblin's body. The female goblin didn't die immediately. It stared at the knight apprentice with a gaze filled with loathing and anger. The baby in its arms fell after it lost its grip, and the tiny thing crawled towards the knight apprentice, crying while emitting chirp-like sounds. The knight apprentice couldn't bear to kill the powerless little thing. "Kill it," an icy voice resonated in his ears. The knight apprentice looked at Alaric in shock. "But my lord, this is... That bloody thing might turn into another hobgoblin if we leave it be. It will seek revenge for the destruction of its tribe, and it will mercilessly slaughter humans. Kill it." Alaric's voice was filled with unquestionable authority. The knight apprentice trembled, and his gaze slowly hardened as he looked at the tiny creature crawling beneath his boots. With a low grunt, he lifted his sword and stabbed its heart, which killed it on the spot. Looking at the knight apprentice's complicated expression, Alaric sternly reminded him, "You must bear in mind that these creatures are our enemies. If one of them survives, they will come back to seek revenge. The victims could be your friends or even your family, so no matter how difficult it may be, you must harden your heart and kill them without mercy." Alaric's words resonated deeply in the knight apprentice's mind, shaking his very being down to his core. "I was foolish. Thank you for reminding me, my lord." He stared at Alaric, who was younger than him by a decade, with newfound respect. He respected the young heir's decisiveness. Alaric tapped the man's shoulder. "The battle isn't over yet. More enemies are coming. You better get ready." Chapter 31. The Powerful Hobgoblins. While Alaric's team was causing a disturbance in the goblin settlement, the three other teams had already regrouped, and they are currently fighting with the elite goblin warriors. "Where is Lord Alaric?" Arthur looked around while fending off the goblins that were attacking him. Some time had already passed since the signal was released, but there was still no sign of his presence. This made him and the others feel a bit anxious. Normal goblin warriors should pose no threat against Lord Alaric. Was there an accident on his side? Arthur's expression was grim. Suddenly, three larger goblins appeared in his field of vision. They were as tall as adult humans, and the aura they exuded was similar to that of fatal grade monsters. Hobgoblins! Arthur's pupils dilated when he identified the creatures. The moment these three powerful monsters appeared, the goblin warriors became more aggressive. Eek! 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 Hi! Hi! The weird noises they made resonated in everyone's ears. At this moment, the old knight, Henry, stepped forward and shouted, "Do not falter. These monsters are just goblins. We can easily take care of them. We are the proud warriors of House Silvasald. Let these monsters know why we are called the Defenders of the North. The old knight's words ignited everyone, and the unease in their hearts quickly dissipated like smoke. Kill them. Kill these goblins. Arthur took the opportunity to lead the charge. Follow me to kill these monsters. Charge with me. The warriors of House Silversod showed their valiance. In the face of more than 100 goblins, they fearlessly charged. As soon as the two sides clashed, the goblins were decimated. They were unable to stop the trained human warriors with their crude weapons. Even their leather armor proved to be useless against the humans' finely crafted weapons. It was a one-sided massacre. The most fearsome among them was Arthur, who was at the forefront of the formation. He was like an enraged bull, slicing his way into the goblins' flimsy formation. Meanwhile, the old knight, Henry, looked steady and stable. He wasn't as ferocious as Arthur, but he was killing the goblins with quick and precise movements. On the other hand, the younger knight, Aldrin, wasn't any less impressive than the two. His spear moved so fast that no goblin warrior was able to get close to him. Under the leadership of these three powerful knights, House Silver Sword's warriors managed to push back the goblin warriors despite the disadvantage in numbers. Grah! A deep, enraged roar suddenly erupted as one of the hobgoblins came charging at Aldrin. Sensing the approaching danger, Aldrin adjusted his stance with narrowed eyes. "Come at me," he shouted without fear. Just like any other monsters, goblins were also territorial creatures. Aldrin's shout provoked the hobgoblin, making it even more furious. As soon as Aldrin was within its striking range, the hobgoblin lifted its weapon, a two-handed axe. Whoosh! The air seemed to fluctuate as it swung its two-handed axe down with the intention to destroy Aldrin in a single shot. Aldrin didn't foolishly try to block the axe. He deftly stepped to the side. Bang! The two-handed axe failed to hit its target and struck the ground hard, creating a deep pit and causing the soil and rocks to fly out in all directions. After evading the hobgoblin's axe, he stabbed out his spear, aiming for the creature's neck. Whoosh! The hobgoblin tilted its head, narrowly avoiding the pointed blade of Aldrin's spear. It then swiped its axe in a fan-shaped direction. Aldrin quickly jumped into the air to avoid the destructive blow, but this move left him open. The hobgoblin kicked him hard, sending him flying into the air. He smashed into a big tree before he fell to the ground. Aldrin! Sir Aldrin! Everyone was alarmed when they saw this. They didn't expect the hobgoblin to be this powerful. Henry and Arthur wanted to help him, but the remaining two hobgoblins stopped them, preventing them from offering any help. Damn it! These monsters are smarter than I thought. Henry's expression darkened. The situation was critical. Aldrin was outmatched in terms of strength, and if nothing was to be done, he might perish here. Sir Henry, leave these two guys to me. Go and help Sir Aldrin, Arthur muttered, his voice cracking under the pressure. These hobgoblins were more powerful than normal knights. Even for Arthur, it wouldn't be easy to hold off two of them. However, he had no choice but to take this gamble for the sake of his comrade's safety. Henry hesitated at his words, but upon seeing Arthur's determined gaze, he solemnly nodded. "All right, just buy me some time. I will return to help you as soon as I can." Nodding his head, Arthur shouted, "Go!" Henry wasted no time. He immediately rushed over to Aldrin, pulling him out of death's door. "Are you all right, Aldrin?" The old knight stared deeply at Aldrin and checked the state of his body. Cough. Aldrin coughed heavily, blood trickling down his lips. "I'm fine." "Just broke a few bones," he responded in a hoarse voice. Good, seeing that he still had the energy to joke. Henry was relieved. "We need to kill this guy quickly, so Arthur is holding off two on his own," the old knight muttered. Aldrin nodded. He used his spear to prop himself up. "You just need to distract it. I will do the rest," Henry said before he lunged at the hobgoblin. Aldrin's chest was heavy, and every time he moved, it felt like he was being repeatedly stabbed. However, he gritted his teeth and followed Henry closely. "I'm a knight of House Silversod. This pain is nothing." Aldrin ignored the pain. He harnessed his mana to the maximum to keep up with the old knight. After gaining momentum, he rushed ahead and thrust his spear, causing a sharp whistling sound. The hobgoblin saw his attack coming and lifted its axe to block the tip of his spear. Clang! A chance! Henry took the opportunity when the axe had obscured the hobgoblin's vision. Aiming for its neck is too risky. I should go for its stomach. Thinking of this, he closed in on the monster and stabbed a part of its belly that wasn't covered by the leather armor. Kashk. Chapter 32. Goblin Chieftain. Blood gushed out from the hobgoblin's stomach as soon as Henry pulled out his sword. Grah! The creature staggered and roared in pain. It was evident that the attack had hit an organ, but it was able to stabilize itself by utilizing its mana to aid in healing. Just like most fatal-bred monsters, hobgoblins also had a strong vitality. Its regenerative abilities were also very strong, making it more resilient than other monsters of the same level. I'm not done yet. Henry didn't let the hobgoblin recover. He pounced at the creature with his sword above his head. He then harnessed his mana to strengthen his arms before giving his sword a mighty swing. Whoosh! The hobgoblin immediately lifted its axe in an attempt to block his sword. However, it could no longer offer much resistance given the state of its body. Under the intense power behind Henry's sword, the hobgoblin's axe was sent flying. The old knight's sword continued unimpeded and struck the monster's shoulder, slicing all the way down its hips. Kashk! Thud! Henry stared coldly at the hobgoblin corpse as he flicked his blood-covered sword. He then turned his head to Aldrin and inspected his condition. "Are you all right?" he asked. Aldrin's face was pale, but he responded with a nod. "I'm fine. We should go and help Sir Arthur." Hearing this, Henry nodded with a grim look. At this moment, Arthur was battling with two hobgoblins. Clang! 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 The fearsome clashes of their weapons sent sparks flying in all directions. Somehow, Arthur was able to hold them off, but it was obvious from a glance that he was losing steam. Arthur was breathing heavily and he could feel his mana running amok within his body. To keep up with these two monsters, he utilized every ounce of mana he had, disregarding the fatigue that had accumulated. Just as Henry and Aldrin were about to come over to help him, the two hobgoblins suddenly turned their gazes towards their camp. Their beastly eyes revealed a human-like expression of surprise. What's going on? Arthur was confused by their reaction. Why are they staring at their camp with those faces? Is it him? He thought about Alaric, who hadn't shown himself since the battle began. When this crossed his mind, he became more certain that Alaric had something to do with this. Meanwhile, the two hobgoblins abandoned Arthur and sprinted back to their camp while emitting strange roars. A figure landed beside Arthur. It was the old knight, Henry, who now had a perplexed face. What's happening? Why did those two hobgoblins retreat? It's him. It must be Lord Alaric, Arthur muttered. Hearing this, Henry raised an eyebrow. Let's go. We have no time to waste. We need to help him. Arthur sheathed his sword and rushed towards the goblin camp. Henry didn't follow him immediately. He looked around and observed the battle situation. Some knight apprentices were injured, but their wounds weren't lethal. There were still over 50 to 60 elite goblin warriors left, which was over 4 times more than their numbers. Aldrin, stay here and take command. I will head to the goblin camp to search for Lord Alaric. Henry shouted to the young knight before he rushed to the settlement. Aldrin stared at the old knight's back with a deep look. He wanted to help them, but he knew that he wouldn't be of much help. This made him feel frustrated for being weak. Damn it! I'm so useless. If it weren't for Sir Henry, I would have died at the hands of that damned goblin. I need to get stronger. Furious at his incompetence, the goblins became the sole outlet to release his rage. Kill these damn goblins. Don't leave a single one of them alive, Aldrin shouted at the top of his lungs. Yes, sir. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Inside the goblin settlement, Alaric was busy destroying the houses of the goblins when he sensed a strong presence coming towards them. He turned his head in a certain direction and saw a towering green figure that was even taller than him. Its body was covered in black tattoos and it was wearing a necklace with human skulls. This monster was significantly larger than the hobgoblins, and its aura was so intimidating that it made the knight apprentices behind Alaric to freeze in place. That's a goblin chieftain. Seeing this creature, Alaric quickly opened the cyan screen that had appeared earlier when they found the settlement. Underscore, mission complete. You received 200 battle points, 50 XP, and 5 stat points. Underscore, Alaric Silvasud 90 XP, 180 to 500ths. Potential, B. Traits, horseback riding C, swordsmanship SSS, close combat D, archery F, hunting E, tracking F, sixth sense F. Strength, 100. Stamina, 34 plus. Agility, 35 plus. Vitality, 27 plus. Endurance, 42 plus. Mana, 13 plus. Battle points, 1520. Stat points, 8. Requirements for next advancement, 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. Including the 3 stat points he had accumulated in 3 days, he now had 8 stat points. Which stat should I increase? I don't think my maximum strength will be enough to fight against that monster. Just one look at it and he could bet it was at the level of an elite knight, which was at the top among fatal grade monsters. After a split second, Alaric decided to increase his agility. He used all of his 8 stat points without hesitation. Agility, 35-43. After increasing his agility, Alaric closed the screen and calmly faced the monster. There's no turning back anymore. The presence of the goblin chieftain was out of his expectations. He thought that the hobgoblins were the strongest monsters in this settlement. Who would have thought that a more fearsome creature was hidden here? You guys retreat first. You will only get in the way if you stay here, Alaric shouted at his subordinates. The knight apprentices faltered upon hearing his words. How can we leave you, my lord? Even if we die here, we will never abandon you. One of them responded with a grimacing smile. The others didn't say anything, but it was obvious that they had no intention to leave. Chapter 33. Against the Goblin Chieftain. Alaric was moved, but this was no time for bravado. If you want to help me, then don't let the small fries interfere. I'll deal with the Goblin Chieftain on my own, he muttered. They would only hinder him if they joined the battle. The knight apprentices understood this, so they nodded with serious faces. Be careful, my lord. At this moment, the Goblin Chieftain finally made a move. It rushed at them with quick and heavy strides. Each step left a deep footprint in the ground, a clear testament to its weight and strength. After gaining momentum, it lifted its weapon, a huge spiked club that screamed danger. With a wide swing, it brandished the spiked club, causing a violent blast of wind. Stay back, Alaric shouted at his subordinates. He then channeled his mana to strengthen his arms. Subsequently, he made a quick dash forward, forcing the Goblin Chieftain to change the direction of its attack. Graw! Alaric had already anticipated this. He took an abrupt turn, skillfully avoiding the club. Bang! The ground trembled after it was struck by the Goblin Chieftain's club. Alaric immediately took the chance to attack after it missed him. He waved his swords, leaving ghost-like afterimages in the air. Multiple cuts appeared on the monster's body, but they were too shallow to cause substantial damage. What a thick skin! Did it cover itself with mana? No way! Alaric was stunned. He used every force in his body to land those hits, but they only left minor cuts on the Goblin Chieftain's body. The wound inflicted upon its body enraged the Goblin Chieftain. It raised its head and let out a furious roar that reverberated through the forest. Grok! It then glared at Alaric, the human warrior who had wounded it. Its beastly eyes were burning with fury. Suddenly, it pounced at him and released a barrage of attacks. Bang! 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 Alaric adroitly avoided the club. If I get hit once, I'm done for. He thought to himself. He knew it as soon as he felt the power behind those strikes. The area around them had already been pulverized by the enraged goblin chieftain. I'm faster, but my stamina will run out soon. I must do something. Thinking about this, Alaric no longer passively defended. Every time there was a chance, he would swing his sword and stab the monster's body. More and more cuts appeared on the goblin chieftain's body, which served to enrage it even further. Grok. Mana started to take form around its body, making Alaric feel a heavy, intense pressure. Aura manifestation. Alaric's eyes flashed with shock when he saw this. An elite knight was capable of drawing out their mana and using it to form a protective shield that covered every inch of their body. Furthermore, this also doubles their strength for a short duration. This method of using mana was called Aura manifestation. Elite knights rarely use this technique since it consumes a lot of mana and it might even drain them with prolonged usage. Alaric didn't expect to see a goblin chieftain use this technique against him. This only means that this particular monster was close to advancing to the next level. To think that this guy is almost at the disaster grade. A monster at the fatal grade was equivalent to a knight, with some even as powerful as an elite knight. Above them were even more dangerous creatures which were classified as disaster-grade monsters. Monsters at this level were capable of destroying an entire village on their own. They were living disasters and forces of nature that no one would ever dare to face. Mission: destroy the Goblin Tribe 2. Difficulty: normal. Defeat the Goblin Chieftain and destroy the Goblin Settlement. Rewards: 500 battle points, 100 EXP, 10 stat points, and equipment upgrade card by 1. Penalty for failure: minus 800 battle points. A mission. This is just a normal difficulty. Nonsense. Alaric was speechless. However, he had no time to be surprised. The Goblin Chieftain lunged at him and wildly swung its giant spiked club. Whoosh! 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 Soon, Alaric was forced into a corner with no room to escape. Left with no choice, he used his swords to block the Goblin Chieftain's club only to be flung away by its tremendous force. Ooze! Alaric grimaced as he twisted his body in midair. He landed awkwardly while trying to balance his weight. So powerful! It was only at the peak of the fatal grade, but the power of the Goblin Chieftain was already far beyond his imagination. My lord! A voice suddenly drifted into his ears while he was warily looking at the Goblin Chieftain. He turned his head and saw Arthur rushing towards him with an urgent look. The former mercenary was covered in blood. Seeing his state, Alaric couldn't begin to think what he had gone through before coming here. Not far from him, Alaric also noticed the old knight, Henry, who was similarly covered in blood. The two knights must have killed their way in just to find him. Alaric felt a bit relieved to see them. With the help of these two, they might be able to take down this monstrous creature. The Goblin Chieftain frowned when it sensed the presence of the two knights. My apologies for being late, my lord. We had to deal with two hobgoblins on our way here, Arthur muttered as he walked towards Alaric. It's fine. I'm glad to see you here. He nodded at the two knights. Let's save the chit-chat later. We still have to deal with that monster. He tilted his head. The two knights moved their gazes at the towering Goblin Chieftain. They could sense its overwhelming presence from where they stood. It was incomparable to the hobgoblins they fought earlier. Aura manifestation. Henry was stunned when he saw the visible energy that covered the monster's body. Arthur's face turned cold when he heard this. Lord Alaric was fighting a monster at this level on his own. The former mercenary was relieved that they had arrived at the right time. Chapter 34. The Goblin Chieftain with Inexhaustible Stamina. What's the plan, my lord? Henry muttered while keeping his eyes on the Goblin Chieftain. Plan? There's no plan. Just fight with all you have. It will consume its mana soon. We just need to hold on until then, Alaric responded, his voice carrying a trace of uncertainty. Suddenly, the goblin chieftain grew impatient and lunged at them, brandishing its giant spiked club. The three knights immediately jumped backward, evading the heavy blow. Bang! A pit that was over a meter deep was created after that devastating strike. Shocked by its formidable power, they felt extremely unsettled. Can we all survive after it exhausts its mana? Arthur frowned as he unconsciously tightened a grip on his sword. If he was alone, he would have retreated without hesitation. However, he was no longer a mercenary, but a knight serving under his lord. As a knight, it was his duty to protect his lord and to carry out the tasks he was assigned to. Even in the face of danger, he would never break his promise. He no longer wanted to return to the life of being a mercenary. He was sick of that aimless and monotonous life. I must protect Lord Alaric, even if I have to die, he muttered to himself. At this moment, the goblin chieftain targeted the nearest person, which was Henry. The old knight carefully avoided the attacks. He wanted to release a counterattack, but the monster was so relentless and it didn't give him any room to breathe. Alaric and Arthur quickly came over to help him, allowing the old knight to catch his breath. Clang, clang, clang. How is it still moving with such speed after fighting recklessly for a long time? Alaric was starting to get anxious the more the battle dragged on. He expected the goblin chieftain to lose momentum, but it showed no signs of fatigue. At this rate, we will run out of mana before it will exhaust itself. Alaric's face fell. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Outside the goblin settlement, Aldrin led the knight apprentices in decimating the goblin warriors. He was like a tiger who had encountered a flock of sheep. No goblin warrior could stop his spear. Whenever one tried, they would have their heads stabbed accurately. To have that kind of power despite being gravely wounded, knights are truly on a different level. The knight apprentices couldn't help but marvel as they watched him massacre the goblin warriors so effortlessly. Meanwhile, the man in question was unaware of everyone's thoughts. He focused his attention on killing the goblin warriors. I must finish my task here as soon as possible so that I can go and help them, Aldrin thought. At first, he believed that Alaric was just an ordinary noble son, but then he suddenly revealed his talent to everyone. He also displayed a commanding ability that was not any less impressive than other experienced knights. Most importantly, his swordsmanship was out of this world. That was also the time when Aldrin had vowed to himself that he would always ensure Alaric's safety. 10 minutes later, the last goblin warrior was finally killed. Aldrin swept his gaze at the goblin corpses. After making sure that there were no survivors, he shouted, "Let's go inside the goblin settlement and search for Lord Alaric." "Yes, sir." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The battle between the goblin chieftain and the three knights took an abrupt turn when Henry made a fatal mistake. The delicate balance between both sides was broken. Sir Henry, Alaric, and Arthur shouted when they saw the old knight smashing into the ground after taking a blow from the monster. Alaric was flustered. Henry was more than just a subordinate. He was like a mentor and grandfather figure to him. Without hesitation, Alaric made a quick dash. "Hey, I'm here," he shouted to get the monster's attention. However, the goblin chieftain ignored him. It lifted its giant spiked club and smashed it down at the old knight. No! Just as the goblin chieftain's weapon was about to hit the old knight, a spear suddenly blocked its path. Aldrin. Good timing. Alaric didn't waste this opportunity and pulled the old knight out of danger. Just then, Aldrin's spear broke apart and the goblin chieftain's weapon smashed into the ground hard. Bang! Aldrin retreated and quickly pulled out a sword behind his back. Luckily, I'm not late. Now we're even, old man. Alaric inspected the old knight's body. His eyes flashed with concern. "Sir Henry, are you all right?" "Arg!" The old man groaned. "I'm fine, my lord." "Don't worry about me." After making sure that nothing was wrong with him, Alaric reminded the old knight, You should be careful, Sir Henry. We are not facing a simple monster this time. The old knight nodded his head with a grim look. He knew that it was his fault to underestimate the goblin chieftain's speed. I understand, my lord. I will be careful. Good. Can you still fight? We can't beat that beast without you. Alaric didn't want to force the old knight, but his presence was necessary for their victory. Looking at Aldrin's state, Alaric could tell that the young knight was not in the best condition. Furthermore, Arthur was also running out of stamina, which was obvious from his heavy breathing. Henry stood up while grimacing in pain. I can still fight, but we need a better plan now. Alaric nodded in agreement. It was a crucial moment for them to defeat the goblin chieftain. A solid strategy was necessary. Simply exhausting it is impossible. There is a high chance that we will run out of stamina before it does. I need to come up with something. Alaric's mind moved as he analyzed the situation. The goblin chieftain is powerful and it's almost as fast as the rest of us. Hold on. He suddenly thought of something. Its legs. It might be quick, but it has poor lateral movement because of its disproportionately larger torso. If we can somehow impede its movement, there might be an opportunity to kill it. Thinking about this, he shouted, "Everyone, listen closely. Chapter 35, Goblin Chieftain's Beast's Soul Crystal." Alaric told them about his plan. They didn't have enough time to go into details, so he could only hope that each person would do their tasks correctly. I hope this works somehow. The four knights moved simultaneously. With the four of them moving at the same time, the goblin chieftain was momentarily confused. It revealed an annoyed look which was quickly replaced with anger. Graw! Bang! 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 The furious monster recklessly brandished its weapon, destroying everything in its path. Suddenly, Arthur sprung into action. He made a quick dash at the goblin chieftain with his eyes fully focused. His goal was to get its attention to allow the others to proceed with the plan smoothly. The goblin chieftain reacted and turned its gaze upon him, which made the former mercenary feel an overwhelming pressure. At that moment, Henry and Aldrin sent each other a knowing glance before they rushed out. One headed to the monster's left, while the other aimed for the right. Their task was to attack the goblin chieftain's legs while it was occupied by Arthur. The two knights, young and old, had been working with each other for a few years, so their coordination was very solid. They could understand each other's thoughts with a simple look or signal. It was something that they had gradually incorporated into their minds after years of working together. Eck! The goblin chieftain sensed the anomaly in their actions, so it took an abrupt pause to make a sense of what was happening. However, before it could react to their synchronized attack, Arthur pounced at the creature, slashing its chest with his sword. Whoosh! Seeing this, the creature quickly lifted its giant spiked club to block his sword. Clang! TSK. Arthur clicked his tongue, somewhat annoyed that it managed to block him. However, a delighted look hung on his face. Now, he screamed in his mind. Just as he thought of this, Aldrin and Henry stabbed their swords into the monster's legs. Because it was focused on Arthur, it failed to react to their sneak attack. Shush, shush. As soon as the pain registered into its system, the monster roared, its face contorting with agony. Graw! Great! My guess was right. It has almost run out of mana, so its aura manifestation was only concentrated on its fatal parts. It wasn't clear with one look, and it was only a guess on Alaric's part. He thought that a fatal grade monster couldn't have an inexhaustible mana, so he presumed that its aura manifestation was centered on the fatal parts of its body, which means the defenses on other parts of its body were significantly weaker. Alaric no longer hesitated after witnessing how the powerful creature collapsed upon having its legs punctured. He rushed at the goblin chieftain at full speed to gather momentum. Once it was within his range, Alaric threw himself at the creature, using the momentum to propel himself. With its aura manifestation gone, Alaric's sword stabbed deeply into the monster's heart and neck. Shush! The goblin chieftain felt coldness slowly spreading upon its entire body. It tried to lift its hand in an attempt to swat away the human that had stabbed it, but it found itself unable to muster its strength. In the end, it could only stare at Alaric, its eyes fully wide, still unable to comprehend what had transpired. It was stronger, even with the four of them combined, so how did it end up losing? Those were the goblin chieftain's last thoughts before its body collapsed into the ground with a heavy thud. Alaric pulled out his swords from the corpse while staring at it with an ice-cold gaze. "Check if it has a beast soul crystal," he muttered indifferently. Arthur volunteered for the task. He approached the goblin chieftain's corpse and made a cut on its chest. When he saw an orb the size of a golf ball right beneath its heart, his eyes flashed with joy. "My lord, it has a beast soul crystal." He dug the crystal from its chest. He wanted to give it to Alaric right away, but then he saw that it was covered with blood. He immediately wiped off the blood with his hand. With a respectful look, he presented the clean beast soul crystal to Alaric. "My lord." Alaric took the green crystal and observed it closely. Just from touching it, he could feel the dense amount of mana it contained. He then handed it back to Arthur and said, "Keep it for now. We will deal with it once we return to the estate." "Yes, my lord," Arthur nodded as he stashed it inside a small sack. With the death of the goblin chieftain, there was nothing left in the settlement that could threaten them. There was still one hobgoblin left, but it was quickly eliminated by Arthur and the other two knights. Alaric told them to search for beast soul crystals in the hobgoblins' corpses, but they found nothing. It was not surprising. Beast soul crystals rarely appeared in fatal-bred monsters' bodies. Alaric was a bit disappointed, but he didn't take it to heart. Getting the goblin chieftain's beast soul crystal was already a huge boon. Not long later, all the goblins had been eliminated. Not even one was spared. Whether they were women, old, or even babies, all of them were killed. This might be cruel to some, but Alaric knew that this was the best choice. Given the goblins' vengeful tendencies, it would be a disaster to leave one alive. Underscore, mission complete. You received 500 battle points, 100 EXP, 10 stat points, and equipment upgrade card by 1. Underscore, do you want to use your equipment upgrade card? Yes, no. HM, what's this? Alaric was surprised by the new notifications that appeared on the cyan screen. "I'll take a look at it later. There are too many eyes here." After making a decision, Alaric pressed no. At this moment, a knight apprentice came to his side and asked, "My lord, what should we do with the goblin corpses?" Alaric looked at the corpses that littered the ground and muttered, "Except for the chieftain and the hobgoblins, burn everything else." Hearing this, the knight apprentice acknowledged his instructions with a salute. "Yes, my lord." Chapter 36. Returning to North Pine Town, Lucas's shock. Alaric watched as the goblin corpses burst into flames. His face looked cold, but a ripple of emotion flashed in his eyes. He then turned his head to Arthur and asked in a low voice, "Are there any casualties?" Arthur moved his head closer to him and responded, "No, my lord, but almost all of our men are injured. Both Sir Henry and Sir Aldrin need immediate medical attention." Hearing this, Alaric nodded. "All right, we will depart at once. The scent of blood will attract monsters, so we must leave before they come. Tell everyone to get ready." Arthur acknowledged his command with a nod. He then left to relay his instructions. The flames produced caw-caw sounds which resonated in Alaric's ears. "We destroyed the goblin tribe and not one person was killed." Alaric clenched his fists. He managed to change the future. "This means that things won't go according to what I know depending on the actions I take." In his past life, the goblin tribe had attacked North Pine Town and killed many people. That day, House Silvisod lost some of their most capable soldiers. It was a tragedy. However, with his knowledge of the future, Alaric was forcefully turning the cogwheels of fate. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Beyond the walls of North Pine Town, a large group of soldiers and a team of medical professionals were already waiting. Lucas brought them here after he received a report about what happened in the depths forest. At this moment, Lucas was eyeing the tall evergreens with narrowed eyes. He tried so hard to hide it, but a trace of worrying was evident on his face. Suddenly, he sensed the presence of a group emerging from within the forest. It's them. When he sensed Alaric's familiar aura, he felt like a boulder had been lifted off his chest. Our people are coming. Get those with injuries treated immediately, Lucas commanded with a stern look. Yes, my lord. Soon, Alaric's group finally emerged from the forest. It's them. Many of them are injured. Isn't that Sir Henry? Even he was injured. Sir Aldrin seems to be injured too. Look. The monster corpses that they are pulling look quite scary. Everyone was stunned when they saw the state of Alaric's group. Lucas walked towards them while looking at Alaric's condition. When he saw that his son wasn't injured, his eyebrows relaxed. It was then that he noticed the large creature among the monster corpses, a goblin chieftain. Seeing this, his eyes widened momentarily. It looks like it died from the stabs on its heart and neck. But how did they kill a monster at this level? He was aware of how powerful the goblin chieftains were. Such monsters were dangerous, and even an elite knight would have some trouble killing them. Alaric didn't bring an elite knight with him. He only brought 4 knights and 16 knight apprentices. Even if they had joined forces to kill the goblin chieftain, some of them would have died, but it doesn't seem like one of them was killed. Besides, there are even hobgoblins. Just what on earth happened out there? While he was trying to guess how they had killed the goblin chieftain, Alaric approached him and nodded. My lord. MN. Lucas nodded in response. I know you have a lot of questions. I will give you the detailed report of what happened once we return to the estate. Alaric knew that his father was curious when he saw the look on his face. All right. You should get yourself checked. You might have gotten injured without knowing. Lucas reminded him. Yes, my lord. Right at that moment, an anxious voice suddenly drifted into their ears. My lord. Hearing this familiar voice, Alaric turned his head. It was a young girl dressed in a servant's uniform. She was crying in distress as she ran towards Alaric. Elena. Alaric looked at his father with a questioning gaze. Don't look at me like that. She insisted on coming here when she heard about what happened. Lucas smiled wryly while shaking his head. You better give her an explanation. He chuckled before he walked away while waving his hand. Alaric glanced at his father's back with a speechless look. Step, step, step. Elena grabbed his hand and checked if there was any injury in his body. And my lord, are you all right? You're not injured, are you? She asked, her voice quaking with anxiety. Looking at the worried girl, Alaric gently smiled as he squeezed her hand. I'm fine, Elena. The little girl scrunched her eyebrows as tears threatened to fall from her eyes. I thought something happened to you. It's good that you're safe. I'm relieved, she muttered with a quivering voice. Alaric felt warmth in his heart. I'm sorry for always making you worried. He grabbed her fragile body and embraced her tightly. He could feel her small body shaking. She must have been really scared and worried. Alaric gently rubbed her back. I'm sorry, Elena. He wanted to promise her that this wouldn't happen again, but the words were stuck in his mouth. Elena shook her head. You don't need to be sorry, my lord. You are only doing your duty as the heir of House Silvasad. I'm not worthy to say this, but I'm proud of you. Upon hearing this, Alaric felt something tugging at his chest. He understood his feelings right away. Yeah, I like this girl. It confirmed his feelings for her. Just wait a few more years, Elena. After exchanging a few more words with him, Elena realized that everyone was staring at them weirdly. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Seeing her like this, Alaric chuckled in amusement. A while later, the medical experts brought the injured back to the estate under the protection of House Silversword's knights and warriors. As soon as they arrived, Alaric was summoned to Lucas's study to give his report. Alaric didn't have the time to change into a new set of clothes. His leather armor was covered in blood, which filled the study room with a metallic scent. Lucas pointed at the seat in front of him and said, "Tell me what happened out there. Don't leave any details." Chapter 37, Using the Equipment Upgrade Card. After almost an hour of explaining what had transpired in the forest, Alaric stepped out of his father's study room. He was exhausted, but he had yet to complete today's daily mission, so he headed straight to the training grounds. "Damn, I'm tired. Should I skip today's daily mission?" He immediately erased the thought from his mind. He would receive a penalty once he skipped his daily mission. Although the penalty wasn't heavy, he didn't want to lose even one of those stat points. When he arrived at the training grounds still dressed in his bloodstained leather armor, the knight apprentices who were in the middle of their training were stunned. "Is that Lord Alaric?" I almost didn't recognize him because of his appearance. Among them, Rasmus was similarly surprised. What happened in the evergreen forest? Alaric ignored the shocked knight apprentices and started doing his routine. He had already done this for a few months, so he was now proficient in performing the exercises. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 pull-ups, 10 kilometers run, 100 vertical slashes, 100 diagonal slashes, 100 horizontal slashes, 100 stabs. You received 10 battle points. You received 1 EXP. You received 1 stat point. Alaric immediately opened the science screen with a thought to check his progress. Alaric Silvasod 90 XP, 283 500ths. Potential B. Traits: Horseback Riding C, Swordsmanship SSS, Close Combat D, Archery F, Hunting E, Tracking F, Sixth Sense F. Strength 100. Stamina 34 plus. Agility 43 plus. Vitality 27 plus. Endurance 42 plus. Mana 13 plus. Battle points 20-30. Stat points 11. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. I'm almost halfway through my battle point requirement. Well, I still have a long way to go. Alaric was quite satisfied with his progress. With more missions, he might advance faster than he had anticipated. The only problem was that they rarely appeared. Do you want to use your equipment upgrade card? Yes, no. HM. He had almost forgotten about this. He looked around and noticed that the knight apprentices were watching his every move. Some were even copying his exercises. Seeing this, Alaric waved at them and quickly left the training grounds. He then headed straight to his room before he clicked yes. Please choose an item that you want to upgrade. An item? How do I choose an item? He was confused. It was then that he suddenly thought about something. He grabbed the 2 swords tied to his waist and muttered, "Can I use this?" You can only upgrade 1 item. Another message appeared on the science screen. I see, so that's what it was talking about. Should I try it on one of my swords? Alaric thought deeply. He wasn't sure what this thing would do to his sword, but he knew that the science screen never did something ordinary. After some hesitation, Alaric sheathed one of his swords, leaving him with 1 sword in his hand. Do you want to use your equipment upgrade card on the selected item? Yes, no. Alaric clicked yes. Congratulations! You have upgraded your common steel sword to uncommon steel sword. Uncommon steel sword. Sharpness 10. Durability 10. Alaric furrowed his eyebrows when he noticed the changes on the sword. It's a bit heavier and the blade seems to be sharper than it was before. Is this because of that equipment upgrade card? Alaric wanted to put it to the test. He swung the sword a couple of times. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Alaric realized immediately that the sword had truly improved. Although it was a bit heavier, every blow from his sword now carried more strength. He also found out that he could infuse it with mana to strengthen the blade and lighten its weight. He knew that only weapons forged by skilled artisans could do something like this. A normal steel sword became a powerful weapon after being upgraded by that card. Amazing! Alaric's eyes flashed with joy. With this sword, his strength would significantly improve. Too bad I only got one. If only I had one more, I could have upgraded both my swords. Alaric lamented with a look of regret. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day. It was the 20th of November in the Estonian calendar. Alaric just completed his daily mission. After his training, he headed to the clinic to check the condition of Henry and Aldrin. Upon his arrival, he was greeted by the doctor in charge, an old man who looked to be in his 60s. "Greetings, my lord," the old doctor bowed politely. Alaric nodded to acknowledge his greeting. "How are the patients, Dr. Lloyd?" he asked the old man. Dr. Lloyd smiled faintly at his inquiry. "Everyone has been treated on time, my lord. With a little more time, they should fully recover and return to their normal lives." Alaric was relieved to hear this. "That's good. Can I visit them? I'd like to speak with them." The old doctor nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely. I will take you inside." Alaric shook his head and said, "There's no need to trouble you, Dr. Lloyd. I can go in by myself." "Will that be all right?" The old doctor hesitated. Alaric reassured the old man. "All right, but if you need anything, don't hesitate to call me," Dr. Lloyd reminded him. "Of course." After getting the doctor's signal, Alaric entered the building where the patients were being monitored. He first visited the night apprentices. They were overwhelmed by his presence. They didn't expect that he would come to visit them and check their condition. This made them feel that they had chosen the right lord to follow. Alaric knew the importance of building trust between his subordinates. It was just a small gesture from him, but this would make those warriors more loyal to him. In this dog-eat-dog world, who wouldn't want to follow a caring lord? Soon, he headed to the last room where Henry and Aldrin were staying. "My lord, Lord Alaric." Both knights were startled when they saw him stepping inside the room. "At ease, you two. I came here to check on your situation." Alaric smiled at them. Chapter 38, Winter is Near. After some light talk with them, Alaric took out something from his pocket. It was the beast's soul crystal of the goblin chieftain. Seeing him taking out this crystal, the two knights were surprised. Alaric glanced at the old knight and said, "Sir Henry, I noticed that you've been stuck at the peak of the Night Realm for quite some time." Henry sighed upon hearing this. He was born as a commoner and his talent for mana training was discovered late, so he wasn't able to make use of the best years of his life. Through sheer hard work and effort, he managed to become a knight and hone his swordsmanship to a formidable level. However, he was unable to advance further because he had already exhausted his potential. This was his greatest regret. While the old man was lamenting his fate, Alaric continued, "Given your potential, it might take a few more years before you can advance. This might help you in breaking through ahead of time." Alaric handed him the beast's soul crystal. Henry was stunned. He didn't dare take the crystal from him, but Alaric grabbed his hand and put the crystal on his palm. "You deserve this reward, Sir Henry. You are one of the longest-serving knights in the household. As the heir of House Silvasad, it is only right for me to reward our loyal retainers. Please accept it." Alaric smiled at him. But this is too valuable, my lord." The old man couldn't believe it. The beast soul crystal of a fatal braid monster was expensive, and it was especially true for the beast soul crystal of the goblin chieftain. A normal beast soul crystal could be sold for 500 gold coins up to 2,000 gold coins depending on the quality. On the other hand, the beast soul crystal of the goblin chieftain was worth more than 2,000 gold coins. After all, that creature was close to becoming a disaster grade. Henry was aware of this, and based on his estimates, this crystal was worth around 3,000 gold coins. Alaric gave him a stern gaze. "If you return it to me, I will throw it away." The old knight was speechless. "In that case, I will put it to good use. Thank you for giving me such a precious reward, my lord." "I will never forget this." Henry lowered his head as he clutched the crystal firmly. Alaric smiled as he nodded. "You earned it." He then turned his gaze to Aldrin. "I know what you're thinking, Aldrin. You might not have served the household for long, but I have seen your loyalty. When the time is right, I will also give you the opportunity to advance. For now, you should continue with your mana training. Aldrin was like an older brother to him, so he didn't bother to use honorifics. Alaric would only speak formally to him in front of the other warriors. Aldrin was moved by his words. Yes, my lord. I will do my best. I won't disappoint you, he proclaimed with unwavering confidence. Among the warriors in the household, he had the highest potential. Some even believed that he had the chance to become a transcendent knight and leave his name in the Estanian dragon leaderboard. Everyone had high expectations for him, and this left a heavy pressure on his shoulders. Alaric chatted with them briefly before he bid them farewell. It looks like the household will welcome another elite knight soon, Alaric thought as he stepped out of the clinic. The household is becoming stronger, but there is still something that I need to take care of. A kind face appeared in his mind. It was the face of his uncle, Charles Silvesod. In his past life, his uncle used poison to kill his father. Alaric didn't know the exact date, but he had a rough guess of when his uncle would start his schemes. This time, I will not let you harm my family. His eyes flashed with a fearsome glint. If a knight was nearby, they would have sensed the killing intent he was emitting. Step, step, step. Alaric heard a series of footsteps down the hallway, so he immediately concealed his fury. The maidservant in the hallway was startled when she saw him. My lord. Alaric nodded with an indifferent expression. He tried to smile at her, but his face had gone stiff. Don't mind me, he muttered as he walked past the maidservant. He looked scary today for some reason. The servant thought as she bowed to him. Meanwhile, Alaric was unaware of her thoughts. He went straight to his room to write down his plans on how to deal with his uncle. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Snowflakes fell from the sky, marking the coming of winter. It was the 30th of November and Alaric was preparing for his trip to Rivod, a city next to Vale. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, Alaric gave himself a satisfied nod. Not bad, he praised the clothes that were tailor-made for him. The tailor, a chubby middle-aged man wearing glasses, chuckled upon hearing his words. I'm glad that you like it, my lord. Elena, give him his reward, Alaric instructed while looking at Elena's reflection in the mirror. The girl nodded to acknowledge his instruction. She then took out a small sack that they had prepared beforehand and handed it to the chubby middle-aged tailor. The chubby tailor grinned when he felt the weight of the small sack. Thank you for the reward, my lord. If you need more custom-made clothes, please send someone to inform me and I will make it for you anytime. Alaric waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. When the chubby tailor saw his cue, he bowed and tactfully left the room with the small sack of coins in his hand. After he left, Alaric's face relaxed. You look great, my lord, Elena remarked while staring at his side profile. Alaric chuckled. Really? Elena nodded innocently. Alaric faced her and took her in his embrace. How about you come with me this time? The trip will be boring without you. Elena blushed at his surprise attack and his words almost melted her that she was unable to respond for a while. Chapter 39, Trip to Rivod. You're teasing me again, my lord. Elena pursed her lips. I'm telling the truth. HMPH. The two exchanged playful banters for a while before they went down the main hall. As soon as they arrived at the main hall, they saw Lucas and Maria chatting with Warwick, who would lead the entourage. Sensing their arrival, Lucas turned his head and nodded to Alaric. You look good. Those clothes suit you. The Baron showed a rare smile. Thank you, my lord. I got this made recently in preparation for this trip. Alaric responded with a light chuckle. Meanwhile, Maria approached him and adjusted his collar. Be careful out there, son. You must always wear thick clothes and don't forget to stay close to the fire at night to keep yourself warm. Hearing her gentle reminder, Alaric smiled and nodded his head. Yes, my lady. Oh, by the way, I plan to bring Elena with me for this trip. Lucas raised an eyebrow at his words, but he didn't say anything. He just stared at his wife as if telling her to make the decision. Maria understood his gaze and contemplated deeply. The trip to Raivad was an annual thing, and their main goal was to visit their longtime friend and ally, the House Paxley. However, there was something different about this year's visit. Just recently, they received a letter from House Paxley saying that their eldest daughter wanted to get to know Alaric, so they asked for his presence in this year's annual visit. From their message, it was obvious that they were interested in betrothing her to Alaric. Maria was worried that Elena's presence might make things awkward for the eldest daughter of House Paxley. Alaric is an adult now. I believe he knows what to do. After some thought, Maria relented. All right, but you must be considerate about the other party's feelings. Alaric knew what she was talking about, so he nodded his head to show that he had understood her words. Yes, my lady. Good. I hope that your trip will be smooth and pleasant. Thank you for your well wishes, my lady. All right. You should leave while the sun is still up, Lucas suggested with a calm voice. Yes, my lord. After bidding his parents farewell, Alaric stepped out of the mansion and entered the carriage with Elena. Warwick hopped on his mount and commanded the entourage. Let's go. Lucas and Maria stood outside the mansion and watched them leave. Will things be all right? The Baron asked while glancing at his wife. Maria shook her head. I don't know. I just hope that our son will not hurt the eldest daughter of House Paxley. Her voice carried a trace of uncertainty. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Wardhand District, Raivad. Inside a huge mansion within an estate surrounded by tall earthen walls, a young lady dressed in winter dress was busy grooming herself in front of the vanity mirror in her room. She had long ash blonde hair and a pair of cerulean eyes. Her refined facial features seemed to have been sculpted with great care, flawless and beautiful. You look gorgeous, my lady. Lord Alaric will definitely fall for you, exclaimed the young maidservant who was combing her hair. The blonde-haired young lady revealed a demure smile at her words. Seeing her smiling face, the maidservant couldn't help but ask, My lady, what do you like about Lord Alaric? She was certain that her young lady hadn't seen Alaric before, so how did she suddenly fall for him? The young lady fell silent for a moment and soon her eyes glazed over as if she was recalling a distant memory. I have seen him once a long time ago when we were still young. He was probably 12 at that time. He had a cute face and was quite tall for his age, but that's not the best thing about him. At that time, there was this boy who used to follow me around to get my attention. He was really annoying and he even tried to touch me improperly. I was so scared. I really wanted to slap his face, but I couldn't do anything about him because of his family's influence. It was then that he came ... The young lady giggled when she recalled her first encounter with the young Alaric. And then, what happened? The maidservant eagerly asked, curious to know what had happened next. The young lady smiled. Before that perverted boy could touch me, Alaric appeared and punched his face. He then looked at me and said, Are you all right? At this point, the young lady's face turned red like a tomato. Oh my God! I wish I was there to see that happen, the maidservant remarked with a sigh. While the two were chatting, they suddenly heard a series of knocks on the door. Knock, knock, knock. The young lady made a shushing gesture at the maidservant before she said, You may come in. As soon as the words came out of her mouth, the door was pushed open by a middle-aged woman wearing thick makeup. My lady, a look of fear flashed in the maidservant's eyes the moment the middle-aged woman entered the room. The middle-aged woman ignored the maidservant. She stared at the young lady with an eyebrow raised upward. Hershey, how are your preparations for Lord Alaric's visit? The young lady named Hershey was inwardly nervous. She tried to look composed as she replied, All preparations are ready, my lady. MN, the middle-aged woman hummed. She then crossed her arms and muttered, Make sure that nothing will go wrong tomorrow. That boy has the same talent as his father. It would be good to leave a good impression on him. Hershey nodded. I understand, my lady. I will do my best to keep Lord Alaric entertained. The middle-aged woman grinned. Good. Without even bothering to say goodbye, she turned around and left. As soon as the door closed, the maidservant breathed a sigh of relief. She's finally gone. That was scary. Hershey stood up and walked towards the coffee table by her bedside. On top of the table was a flower vase and a portrait of a woman who seemed to be in her late 30s. Hershey took the portrait. An expression of longing was evident in her eyes. Mom, I miss you. Chapter 40. Selfless Love. Later that evening, Alaric's entourage set up camp near the western border of Vale. Thick piles of snow had already accumulated over the land, causing the temperature to drop even further. Alaric draped a thick wool blanket over Elena's shoulders to keep her warm. The girl pulled the blanket and covered herself from the neck down. It's warm. Feel better now. Alaric's gentle voice drifted into her ears. She stared at him and saw him looking over with a light smile. Amen, she hummed in response. Alaric sat next to her and said, Elena, the trip to Raivad this time is different. His voice suddenly turned serious. Elena hugged her legs as she looked at the flickering flame of the bonfire. I know, she responded with a gloomy look on her face. Hearing this, Alaric was taken aback. Did Mom tell her? There was a moment of silence after that small exchange. It was Elena who broke the silence. I already know that you will one day be married to another woman. I'm just a servant, so I don't have the right to be upset, but... It hurts, my lord. Tears blurred her eyes as she spoke. Alaric opened his mouth and tried to come up with words to comfort her, but his mind was blank. In the end, all he could say was, I'm sorry, Elena. Seeing her in tears made him feel torn, but there was nothing he could do about it. If he rejected all marriage proposals sent to him, many people would be offended. He might be politically inept, but he was aware that it would cause House Silvasad a lot of trouble if that ever happened. Elena wiped away her tears and smiled at him. It's not your fault, my lord. It's just me being selfish. I'm sorry if that made you uncomfortable. Alaric gently grabbed her shoulder and took her in his arms. You are not selfish, Elena. I understand your frustrations and I don't blame you for that, he said as he rubbed the back of her head. Thank you for your understanding, my lord. Elena buried her face in his chest. Soon, Alaric heard her rhythmic breathing. He looked at her sleeping face and smiled. Good night, Nana. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day, Elena was awoken by the bumpy road. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the familiar interior of the carriage. Upon turning her head, she realized that she was sleeping on Alaric's lap. How was your sleep? Alaric smiled at her. His handsome face dazzled her, which caused her to be momentarily stunned. Oh, it was good, she replied as she hurriedly got up. I'm glad to hear that, Alaric chuckled. Look outside. We are almost there. He pointed at the view beyond the window. Elena followed his gaze. Her eyes were drawn to the beautiful landscape and the tall earthen walls that surrounded Raivad. How beautiful, she muttered. Yeah, but not as beautiful as you. Alaric's smile deepened when he saw her cute side profile. Growl. Elena's gaze stiffened when she heard her stomach growling. She didn't dare look at Alaric out of embarrassment. Seeing her cheeks turning red, Alaric laughed inwardly. He then took out the meat skewers he had prepared for her. Here. I kept them for you. Elena shyly turned her head and looked at the meat skewers in his hand. You should take some for yourself, my lord. I have already eaten. These are for you, Alaric responded. Okay. Elena took the meat skewers and took a small bite at the biggest piece of meat. Her eyes lit up as soon as she tasted the familiar flavor. Is this rabbit meat? Alaric nodded as he chuckled lightly. I know you would recognize it. I know it's your favorite meat. MN. The two chatted until they arrived at the entrance of Raivad, where a representative from House Paxley came to pick them up. Alaric stepped out from his carriage and looked at the beautiful young lady dressed in winter dress. Hershey. Hershey Paxley was someone he owed a huge debt to in his past life. She was his fiancée, and it was because of her that House Silvasad didn't collapse after his uncle's abusive management of the family's finances. A feeling of guilt washed over him as he looked at her face. In his past life, he became indifferent to the world after his parents' and Elena's passing. He had even neglected Hershey, who he was supposed to marry, but she never once complained to him. She remained by his side, and she even waited for him when he was forced into conscription. He still remembered the words she said before he left to join the Crown Prince's army. "I will wait here for you. If you die on the battlefield, then I will kill myself to be reunited with you." When he recalled the words she uttered that day, his eyes misted over. He looked away and pretended that he was wiping off some dirt. "Welcome to Raivad, Lord Alaric. I'm glad to see you in good health." Hershey smiled as she curtsied. The warriors behind her saluted. Alaric suppressed the emotion that was about to burst out of his chest. He bowed to Hershey and responded in a mild tone. "Thank you for taking the time to pick us up in such awful weather, my lady. I'm deeply honored." Hershey covered her mouth as she giggled. "It's only right to serve our guest and longtime friend." The two exchanged another round of pleasantries before they headed to House Paxley's estate. Meanwhile, Elena was keenly observing Hershey, who was now sitting inside their carriage. From the way she spoke to Alaric and that overflowing emotion in her eyes as she looked at him, Elena could tell that this noblewoman had some feelings for her lord. She was jealous, but she controlled herself. "Calm down, Elena. You've already thought this through." She inwardly cheered for herself.